Let's get right to the point. Who is going to enjoy Hogwarts Legacy? Well, from my perspective, I imagine it will be basically three classes of people. The first is going to be the most obvious, and this is basically anyone who is obsessed with the Harry Potter world or, the entire wizarding universe. The second group of people is probably going to be people who like to play video games just to basically use it as an excuse to dress up. The cosplay crowd, basically. I mean, there's plenty of different options for character customization and such that don't really have any effect on gameplay, and if that appeals to you, I think Hogwarts Legacy will be a game you'll enjoy. And of course, the third class of people, kind of like the nostalgia gamer who they don't really like the overly complicated games. They just like kind of the peak gaming to them was something like from the original PlayStation with, Spyro the Dragon or something along those lines. The kind of like open world adventure games with, some secrets to find. That's going to be the basically bread and butter for this franchise. Those are the three categories that I think are really going to enjoy this game. Now, if you don't fall very deep into those specific categories, I would say it's probably pretty safe to assume Hogwarts Legacy will basically be anywhere from okay to just not worth your money. And I guess this is where I come in. I enjoyed the books, I've seen the movies, a few times, and I thought the Wizarding World attractions at Universal Orlando were pretty dang cool. However, I would stop short at calling myself a huge fan. I like it for sure, but I'm not going out of my way to do anything or learn everything Harry Potter. So after I finished my playthrough of Hogwarts, I wanted to take some time and really think about how the game experience felt as a whole, and not just based on the one great or one really horrible moment that I remembered at the time of when I finished it. And so it's actually been about a week and a half since I put down the game. Now, all things considered, I must say my final opinion of the game is that it is okay. It is not the worst thing I've played in recent memory, and honestly, considering the state of gaming in general these last few years, being okay or average is not really a condemnation. Of course, that may also reflect how much my standards have fallen, and if I were to compare the game directly against some of the best games I have ever played, yeah, it's pretty bad. So, by the simple luck of this game coming out in 2023, when every other game seems to compete for the biggest L, Hogwarts is kind of fun. Now, starting off quickly with what I actually enjoyed in Hogwarts Legacy, and be prepared, this is a pretty short list. And I think this is actually probably one of the most universal things about Hogwarts Legacy, at least as far as what people enjoy. And that is just the world around you as a player. All of the little things that they took time to add to make the world, especially the castle. All these things feel so alive. And honestly, the surroundings and details are the single greatest feature about this game. In fact, if the game was not even actually a game, but simply a 3D Hogwarts interactive map, I truly feel that it would have contained the majority of the fun in this game without really any of the other, trivial stuff. And sadly, that is pretty much everything that I found exceptionally good with the game. The quest lines are mostly generic fluff to pad out time in the game, with only Poppy Sweeting's quests, having any real feeling of worth and kind of connecting it to the game's settings. They felt really Hogwartsy, I guess would be for lack of a better term. And, the main quest of the game just lacks any real sense of urgency or threat, and this kind of results in a very unfulfilling victory at the end. And I would not say the story or the main things they do in the game are bad, but I would say they hardly do anything memorable. And at best, the joy they provide is mostly due to taking you through the game and showing you the world, which I already said is the best feature of the game. So yeah, again, the details of the game world are really the driving force behind keeping any of the adventure going. The fights and the wizard duels are also another thing in the game that largely feels like it's just there because it seemed mandatory to include them. The battle system is not awful, it might be a little bit clunky, but with practice and patience, it can run pretty smoothly. However, it really can't be called interesting or exciting, and pretty much after the first hour, every fight just seems like a chore, and it's made worse by being one of the easiest games I have played in many years. In fact, the game felt so unchallenging that The need to upgrade gear or figure out combos never really materialized for me. By the end, I would just try to petrify everything as fast as I could to avoid spending any extra time actually fighting. Or I would just toss out plants and avoid paying much attention at all. Even the bosses lacked almost anything resembling a unique mechanic. There was some on the final boss, but it is hardly different from what you might do during a normal fight. If, to be honest, one of the potentially coolest in-game interactions, again, took place during a Poppy Sweeting quest, in which you actually had to hide behind objects as you advanced. However, this felt like a letdown. The timing of the attacks and everything was incredibly slow, and the risk felt very little. It honestly kind of felt a little bit silly and a little bit like a joke. It could have been a much greater mechanic that they could have fleshed out in other activities in the game, but they didn't. So overall, the depth of the combat, besides being too easy, felt more like it was ripped from a Nintendo 64 or PlayStation 1 game, and then never really updated properly to challenge players with a far better control scheme and far better camera system. Obviously, the 64 and PS1, some of the combat was limited because you couldn't make things overly difficult because of those mechanics. Obviously, those have been overcome to some extent with newer generations of games and newer generations of control systems, and sadly, it just kind of feels a little bit behind the times in that regard. Now, as for the worst things about this game, I have basically just to focus on three main issues for this video. The first of which is the gear system. Now, I covered this in another video, so I won't rehash the whole thing again, but it is really boring and offers very little incentive to advance your character. It was so basic and bland that it offered really zero reasons for me to actually explore and acquire items. If anything, it was just there to basically allow players to sell items and make gold so that they could complete other aspects of the game, and it wasn't really focused on the gear itself. In many ways, this killed the game for me because once I realized how boring it was to actually loot items or try to find treasures, I really just had no reason to do it anymore, and I stopped pretty much trying to do anything. Which leads us to the second major issue of the game: repetitive and mostly pointless minigame-like events that only serve as cosplay game completion padding. As I already said, the gear mostly proved worthless and offered next to zero reasons for you to farm it. Which, had this been a game with a robust item system that truly inspired creative wizard builds and unique bonuses, I could see a reason to run around the map hunting for treasures and growing strong as I actually completed these types of events. However, this is not what the game does. You literally follow your guidebook place to place, collect clothing and building tiles for your room in Hogwarts. Yes, almost the entire reward structure of the game seems based on The Sims. You want to look as stylish as you can in a single-player game that almost nobody will ever see. I'm not sure how that is considered fun. I mean, yeah, my toddler loves playing dress-up games on her tablet, but having grown adults fawning over this kind of stuff on the internet just seems a little bit embarrassing to me. The side games themselves are so ridiculously easy, simple, and repetitive that after beating one the first time, it just kind of feels cringe to do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again. I mean, all you do is slap a key, pop 5 balloons, hop on a platform, cast spells at rocks, drag rocks to a hole, walk a 20-foot maze, if that can actually be called a maze, or you just land on a landing pad from your flying broom. The entire puzzle system of the game seems like it was designed for 8-year-olds, and that might actually be insulting to 8-year-olds. And considering this game is rated T for teen, I would have expected a little bit better from them. Now, my third and final issue that I want to address in this video is that Hogwarts and the entire universe are kind of built on magical secrets, or at least secrets nobody around today still knows about. Now, occasionally there are a few people who do know things, but not even the great wizard Dumbledore could be 100% sure of everything or knowledgeable about everything in the world. And yet, in Hogwarts Legacy, almost everything in the game is clearly and easily identified for you. The game's quest lines, additionally drag you through almost everything in the game, leaving basically nothing in the game to truly be discovered by the player. At best, the game has 3 secrets, and they're all in Hogwarts, for the player to actually find unaided. But again, we're actually told that they exist, and we kind of get told how to find them to a slight degree, or get directed to their presence in some way during the quest line. So in truth, it's not really a secret, it's kind of just something that the game doesn't explicitly tell you how to find, but it tells you that they exist. And once you do find them, the rewards are largely useless and almost meaningless. I mean, again, you either get some cosplay items or you just get some pages for your book. I mean, if you're not 100% completionist or a cosplayer, you probably don't care about finding these rewards at all. Now, overall, Hogwarts is a fun but rather disappointing game. It has a wonderfully designed world that can keep you looking for hours and an acceptable gameplay system. But when you actually consider the progression and save ruining bugs, which I didn't really mention in this video, the glitches that prevent completion of quest lines, the embarrassment of game design that is the gear and stat system, repetitive and simplistic side events, and the humiliation of Hogwarts mysteries via complete tracking through the in-game guidebook, it does kind of become obvious that the game might not be worth the time that you actually invest in it, or the money it cost you to purchase it. If I was to give advice to any potential players of the game, it would be this. If you love all things Harry Potter and consider yourself a rather casual player of video games, knock yourself out and have fun. For everyone else, I would strongly suggest waiting a month more or much longer until the game actually fixes, a lot of the major bugs, and you can basically just buy a used copy from GameStop. That way you can at least trade it back in a week or two for something else. Is the game worth $60? Oh god, no. And honestly, I would still feel bad paying $30. If this came out in a Steam sale for $10 or maybe $5, yeah, I'd say go for it. But as of now, you're not really missing much. And if you have not given in to the FOMO yet, I really see no reason to actually do that anytime soon. But thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.